Welcome to Skinner and Chalmers' Weekly Roast. Today, folding under pressure, the Chalmers Comet and Prankenstein's Gambit.
Welcome back, dear listeners, to another delectable serving of Skinner and Chalmers' Weekly Roast. I am your host, Seymour Skinner, and sitting across from me, radiating his usual aura of stoic pragmatism, is my dear husband, the one, the only, Superintendent Gary Chalmers, the Giga Chad Chalmers.
Well, hello everyone. Seymour, that was an unusually subdued introduction. Although I wouldn't consider myself a Giga Chad. Are you feeling all right? You didn't try to cook breakfast again, did you? The smoke alarms are suspiciously silent.
All is well on the domestic front. Gary! The golems handled the morning meal after a minor incident involving a toaster, a fork, and a misplaced theory about accelerating the browning process. Cogsworth has already filed a preliminary report with their union. But no, my subdued tone comes from a place of profound gratitude and contemplation.
Contemplation. That's usually the precursor to you suggesting we adopt another cryptid. I am still finding glitter from that griffin you were trying to woo with a trail of sardines last month.
Not this time, my love. This is a matter of community, of art, of digital alchemy. We simply must begin today's episode with a heartfelt salute, a veritable 21-gun salute of appreciation for our dear friend and the Pope of Memefield himself, ArticTiger.
Ah, yes, ArticTiger. A very dedicated young man. He's the one who makes us say, steamed hams, on a loop on the internet for those listeners who are somehow not yet aware of this particular brand of surrealism.
It is so much more than that, Gary, MemedHamsAI on Twitch. It's a living tapestry, a constantly evolving piece of performance art. Artic, with the diligence of a master watchmaker and the vision of a Renaissance painter, trained an artificial intelligence on our very lives, our memories, our conversations, our family videos, all woven into a digital echo that endlessly reimagines our most famous culinary misunderstanding.
It is certainly a thing that exists, and I will admit the time it depicted you explaining steamed clams to a bewildered Yugi Muto while I discussed tectonic plates with Garfield was strangely compelling.
Precisely. It captures our essence. But, as with all great artistic endeavors, it comes at a cost. We've received word from Artic that, for the moment, the financial realities of running such a complex machine have outweighed the revenue. The generation of new episodes has been temporarily paused. We understand that. We truly do.
He mentioned he's already saved £80 on server costs just by halting it. It's a practical decision. Running a sophisticated AI isn't cheap, and we wouldn't want him to be out of pocket for our digital doppelgangers.
But what truly touches my heart, Gary, is his spirit. Despite the losses, despite the pause, he remains utterly committed. He's not giving up. He's giving it his all, exploring options and keeping the faith. And for that, we, and I know I speak for our producer DeZenzo and the entire Memefield community, are eternally grateful.
We are. Thank you, Artic. Your passion for this bizarre project is admirable. It takes a unique kind of person to dedicate oneself to immortalizing our kitchen failures.
So, we have a call to action, a quest for our loyal listeners. If you have ever found a moment of joy, a chuckle, a bewildered smile from watching MemedHamsAI, please consider popping over to Twitch. Find ArticTiger. If you have a spare Twitch Prime subscription, or if you're feeling generous, drop him a sub. Let's show him that this beautiful, strange, wonderful creation is valued.
And even if you can't, a kind word in his chat goes a long way, or on the Discord server. Community support isn't just financial, but yes, thank you, Artic, from the bottom of our very real, non-AI generated hearts.
A truly noble endeavor? That kind of unbridled, chaotic creativity, it's a force of nature. It can create beautiful digital plays, and as we discovered last week, it can also manifest in the physical world, turning an institution of learning into a veritable hurricane of folded paper.
Oh, good heavens, Seymour! You are not about to romanticize the Great Paper Airplane War, are you? I am still finding darts in the acoustic ceiling tiles. The cleanup crew found a perfectly folded glider nesting in the taxidermied owl in the library.
Romanticize. Gary, it was an epic, a saga. It was the Iliad, but with less bronze armor and significantly more paper cuts. For an entire week, Memefield High was not merely a school, it was an airspace, a battleground of aerodynamic ingenuity.
It was a menace, and a colossal mess. It all started with one man, if you can call him that, a phantom of mischief.
A legend, you mean? They call him Prankenstein, a world-famous prankster, a virtuoso of vexation. No one knows his true identity. He appears, unleashes a symphony of harmless chaos, and vanishes like a whisper on the wind.
He's a public nuisance with a flair for the dramatic. It began, as these things always do, on a deceptively quiet Tuesday morning. You were in your office, presumably alphabetizing your collection of inspirational posters.
I had just filed, hang in there, under H and was moving on to I. If you can dream it, you can do it under I. The window was open, a gentle breeze wafting in the scent of freshly cut grass from the Golems Union, mandated lawn mowing schedule. And then, it appeared.
The first airplane.
Not just an airplane, Gary. It was a masterpiece. It didn't fly so much as it sailed. It glided through the open window in a perfect, silent arc, performed a graceful loop, the loop over my desk lamp, and came to a rest directly in front of me, its nose pointing at my world's most romantic principal, mug.
I recall your phone call. You sounded less like a school principal reporting a disturbance and more like an ornithologist who'd just discovered a new species of bird.
It was a thing of beauty. It was folded from a single sheet of crisp, gold foil paper. The creases were so sharp you could have shaved with them. And when I unfolded it, there was a single, elegantly calligraphed message inside. It read, "Let the games begin." And it was signed with a tiny, intricate drawing of a lightning bolt, Prankenstein's calling card.
At the time, I advised you to throw it in the recycling bin and lock your window. It would have saved us all a great deal of trouble.
But where's the sport in that, Gary? I was intrigued. I saw it as a challenge, a gauntlet thrown down. I didn't realize he wasn't challenging me. He was challenging the entire student body.
By lunchtime, the first wave had begun. It was subtle at first, a few simple darts zipping across the cafeteria, a glider drifting lazily down from the second-floor landing. The students were perplexed, then amused. They thought it was one of them.
But the quality, Gary! The designs were far beyond the standard fare. There were planes that could boomerang, planes that could hover, planes that spun like a helicopter rotor as they descended. Prankenstein was seeding the school with inspiration, providing the blueprints for the coming storm.
By Wednesday, the storm had made landfall. The students had taken up the challenge. Factions began to form. In the West Wing, you had the Dart Devils, led by that troublemaker Kevin. They specialized in high-speed, low-drag projectiles. Their motto was speed, stealth, and stinging knuckles.
And in the East Wing, a more sophisticated group emerged, the Glider Guild. They were the aesthetes of the conflict, focusing on long-distance, high-endurance craft. They saw themselves as the Air Force, while the Dart Devils were mere infantry. Their prize creation was a 6-foot wingspan monstrosity they called the Albatross. It took 3 of them just to launch it down the main hallway.
It got wedged in the double doors leading to the gymnasium, caused a significant traffic jam during 4th period. I have the incident report right here. Cause of delay, aeronautical obstruction. I never thought I'd have to write that in an official capacity.
The artistry was astonishing. They were using different materials. The home economics class started making planes out of starched fabric. The shop class tried to build one out of balsa wood, though that was quickly disqualified as a heavy ordnance violation.
The Golems were overwhelmed. Cogsworth came to me personally. He said, and I quote, "Superintendent, our union contract stipulates cleanup of standard school debris. This includes but is not limited to food wrappers, discarded homework, and existential dread. It does not cover the mass decommissioning of an entire civilian air fleet."
He had a point. Their Roombas were simply pushing massive piles of paper around. One of them, Roomba number 17, got a dart stuck in its main sensor and spent an hour ramming itself into the leg of a water fountain. It looked quite distressed.
Our talking parrot, Dobwa, who you insist on bringing to school sometimes, learned to perfectly mimic the swoosh sound of a passing dart, which only added to the chaos. He'd hide in the rafters and make the sound, causing students to duck for cover when nothing was there. Psychological warfare.
Even old Bartholomew got involved. The biology class had him for a lesson, and when the teacher turned his back, someone had armed him with a tiny paper airplane tucked between his metacarpals. He looked rather dashing, like a skeletal flying ace.
They called me the Red Baron, although, technically, I am more of an off-white.
See, a unifying cultural event.
It was anarchy, Seymour. By Thursday, it was less about factions and more about survival. You couldn't walk 10 feet without having to check the skies. Teachers were trying to lecture from behind makeshift barricades of textbooks. The cheerleading squad accidentally choreographed an entire routine around dodging incoming aircraft.
It was adaptive learning in action. They were calculating trajectories, assessing wind currents from the ventilation system. It was applied physics on a school-wide scale. I saw a group of students who normally sleep through math class arguing passionately about the principles of lift and drag.
I was getting calls from parents. One mother said her son came home with a paper airplane in his hair. Another claimed her daughter was developing a flyer's twitch. That's when I knew I had to intervene. My initial plan was a school-wide assembly and a sternly worded decree.
The path of the bureaucrat, predictable, uninspired. But Prankenstein had other plans, didn't he?
I was walking towards your office. My speech.
You said speech.
Yeah, well, I did. So, to repeat, I was walking towards your office, my speech on the importance of school safety prepared when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned. There was no one there. Then I looked down. A small, intricately folded paper bird was resting on my epaulet.
It wasn't just a bird, Gary. It was an origami crane, and attached to its leg with a single silk thread was a tiny, rolled-up scroll.
The scroll read, "Your move, Superintendent." That's when it became personal. He had breached my administrative perimeter. He had shown a blatant disregard for the chain of command. This prankster, this Prankenstein, had made a critical error. He had challenged me.
A fire lit in your eyes that day, Gary. A fire I usually only see when a new shipment of igneous rock samples arrives at the Geology Museum or when the Weather Channel predicts a particularly dramatic barometric pressure drop.
It was no longer about stopping the chaos. It was about winning. I couldn't defeat an idea with a detention slip. I had to fight fire with fire. Or in this case, paper with paper. I told my secretary to clear my schedule. I requisitioned the finest cardstock from the art department. I retreated to my office for the rest of the afternoon.
The entire school was buzzing with anticipation. Rumors spread that the superintendent had snapped, that he was in his office, madly folding an army of his own. The students paused their war, a temporary ceasefire, all eyes on the administration building.
I am, as you know, a man of science, Seymour, a student of physics and aerodynamics. I wasn't just folding paper, I was engineering. I spent hours calculating the optimal weight to wingspan ratio. I studied the effects of dihedral and anhedral angles. I consulted meteorological charts of the school's HVAC system.
He was creating a super weapon, a deterrent.
I was creating the perfect paper airplane, a design so advanced, so flawlessly executed that it would command the respect of every student and, most importantly, of Prankenstein himself. I called it the Chalmers Comet.
A name that will live in legend?
It was a modified delta wing design with forward-swept canards for stability and a weighted nose cone fashioned from a single, perfectly centered paperclip for maximum velocity and range. It was sleek. It was powerful. It was beautiful.
On Friday morning, at precisely 10 a.m., you emerged. You walked to the center of the main atrium, the Chalmers Comet held delicately between your thumb and forefinger. A hush fell over the assembled student body. The Dart Devils and the Glider Guild stood side by side, their own creations forgotten. Even the great Gianna Airplane sisters were put into the shadow.
I didn't say a word. I simply held it up, letting them admire its form. I took a deep breath, judged the air currents, and I launched it.
And it flew. Oh, how it flew! It shot from your hand like a bullet, straight and true. It soared the entire length of the atrium, 150 feet, without losing an inch of altitude. Then, just as it reached the far wall, it banked in a perfect 90-degree turn.
It followed the second-floor corridor, navigating the turns as if it had a mind of its own. Students and teachers leaned out of their classrooms, mouths agape, as it sailed past.
Sonic, who was visiting to give a guest lecture on cardiovascular health, later told me it was the only non-sentient object he'd ever seen that could almost keep up with him in a hallway. He said it was way past cool.
The comet completed a full circuit of the second floor, returned to the atrium, and then, its purpose fulfilled, it began a slow, graceful descent. It spiraled down, landing with impossible softness in the exact center of the school crest on the floor. Not a single crease was bent.
The silence that followed was deafening. No one moved. And then a single student, Kevin, the leader of the Dart Devils, began to applaud. Slowly, others joined in. Soon, the entire school was giving a standing ovation. Not for me, but for the plane. For the sheer, undeniable perfection of it.
In that moment, the war was over. No one dared to throw another plane. How could they? Anything they could create would be a pale imitation, an insult to the masterpiece they had just witnessed. They had been beaten not by authority, but by superior craftsmanship.
And what of Prankenstein? Did you ever find him?
No, and I didn't need to. After school, when the golems were conducting the final, peaceful cleanup, I went to retrieve the Comet from the school crest, and there, lying next to it, was a single sheet of gold foil paper folded into a miniature, perfect replica of my Chalmers Comet. And beside that, a note.
What did it say?
It said, "To Superintendent, well played," and it was signed with the lightning bolt. He acknowledged defeat. He understood. It was a matter of professional courtesy.
So you earned the respect of a world-famous prankster. I have to say, Gary, that's quite the feather in your cap. Or, should I say, the paperclip on your nose cone.
It was a matter of restoring order through overwhelming aerodynamic superiority, and I have to admit it was strangely satisfying, more satisfying than a dozen disciplinary hearings.
I do wonder who Prankenstein could be. A student with a hidden talent. A disgruntled former teacher. Maybe it was Mayor Van Gogh seeking to create a surplus of paper for a midnight snack.
I highly doubt Van Gogh has the manual dexterity required for such intricate folding, what with the hooves. And besides, they would have eaten the evidence. No, I believe Prankenstein is exactly what he seems to be, a force of nature. An agent of chaos who reminds us not to take ourselves too seriously.
But an agent who knows when he's been bested. I've kept the Chalmers Comet, you know. It's in a display case in my office, right next to the fossilized trilobite you gave me for our anniversary.
It belongs there, a monument to the time the superintendent had to win a war to win the peace. It was an exhausting week. I think even our pet cloud Cumulus seemed a bit agitated by all the objects flying through his personal space in the atrium.
And the alligators? We took them for a walk that Thursday, and Mr. Jellybeans kept trying to snap paper airplanes out of the air as they flew out of the school windows. It was quite a scene. Sonic was not amused when a particularly large glider crashed into his prize-winning rose bushes.
He gets unusually protective of his hedges. I think it's the one thing in his life that stays still. But this whole affair did teach me something, Seymour.
That paper can be a weapon of mass distraction.
No. It taught me that sometimes the most effective way to manage chaos isn't to suppress it, but to engage with it on its own terms, to understand it, and then to build a better paper airplane.
Spoken like a true leader, Gary, a true aeronautical artisan. It was a week Memefield High will never forget. The students still talk about the Chalmers Comet in hushed, reverent tones. Of course, but first, a brief word from our sponsor, Yip Yip Whoop Whoop Wines, the only vintage in Memefield that's been officially certified as extraterrestrially delicious. One sip, and you'll be seeing strange new worlds.
And possibly strange new paper airplanes. Please drink responsibly. We don't need a sequel to the war.
The story of the paper airplane war is a testament to the fact that even in the most structured environments, a little bit of creative chaos can lead to something truly memorable. It's like that time Roboskinner tried to reprogram the Rubas to plant daisies instead of vacuuming.
That was less creative chaos and more a blatant violation of his parole, Seymour. And they weren't daisies. They were Venus flytraps in my rock garden. I lost a prize-winning piece of schist.
He was trying to add some biodiversity. His heart was in the right place, even if his programming was a bit skewed. He's doing so much better now, especially with his old friend Chalmers back from that destructive dimension. It's good to see him finding his footing.
I agree. His last visit was almost entirely pleasant. He only tried to replace my coffee with motor oil once, which is a significant improvement. He said it was a joke. I chose to believe him.
See, progress? Much like the students of Memefield High, who learned that their principal's husband is not to be trifled with when it comes to aerodynamics. It brought a strange sort of unity to the school. For a few days after, there was a palpable sense of shared experience.
There was also a palpable amount of paper dust in the air. My allergies were acting up for days, but I concede your point. There was a certain esprit de corps.
I even found a note on my desk from one of the Glider Guild members. It was an apology for the Albatross incident, along with a detailed schematic for a new, more structurally sound design that wouldn't get stuck in doorways.
That's surprisingly responsible of them. Perhaps they did learn something after all.
It's all about the application of knowledge, Gary. That's what education is. Whether it's learning about the Pythagorean theorem or learning that the superintendent can end a prank war with a single, perfectly executed throw.
I kept the plane they gave me. It's on my skull mantelpiece. It really ties the cranium together.
We are going to have a talk about you keeping things on your own head, Barthy Milo. It's unhygienic.
Oh, let him have his decorations. He has so little to call his own. Anyway, the legend of Prankenstein lives on. And the legend of the Chalmers Comet serves as a powerful reminder: do not underestimate the quiet ones. They might just be calculating the perfect flight path to victory.
A very dramatic way of putting it, but I suppose it's true. Now, about that gecko. He's been staring at us from his terrarium for the last 10 minutes, tapping a Fanta cap. I think he's getting impatient.
Right, you are. We will be back after a short break to discuss the budding athletic career of Mr. Gay, Gecko, and the philosophical musings of Mary Baron von Floatsalot on the nature of buoyancy. Don't go anywhere!
And thank you again, ArticTiger. Keep up the great work. We're all rooting for you.
Indeed. Until next time, keep your hams steamed and your paper airplanes flying true.